And thanks very much for my easel. I think that's absolutely wonderful. This is a collage about learning, and when we get to certain parts, I'll try to zoom in on some of the parts. The problem that occurred to me conceptually was I'm very concerned about how these techniques affect my learner. So there's a lot of what's in this collage that is based on very personal experience, but I wanted to make it general enough to the point where it could be useful for someone else as well. So over here on the left-hand side, let's see if I can get in. There is a portrait. I'll just indicate with this. There's a portrait of a tutor, which is very loosely based upon myself. And let's see if I can get a little closer on that. I don't know if it's important.
There you go.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay, so I can get a little bit closer. Yeah. Now, the way I think about these techniques is I think about it as a learner and a tutor working in tandem to try to find something that works for the learner. So this collage is my effort to show what my process is as well as what the learner's process is going to be. So the mind map technique is right here. It's kind of hard to tell on the camera, but it centers on Halifax. It's a cutout from a Hertz map. It centers on Halifax. It goes about up to Truro, and I figured, you know what, that's close enough, on top of which it's the right color, so I'm cutting it out and using it. Okay, so this is the mind map. What I'm using that to indicate is the way that my mind can go through some of these techniques, and I can say I can try this one and this one and this one, maybe find something that will help my learner to understand what's going on. Maybe it won't. If one technique doesn't work, I've got 2 or 3 more that I can expand on or that I can pick up on. So the first one over here, this is pattern spelling. Let me see if I can get a little closer here, so you can see a little bit more. There, okay. And we'll zoom a little bit more. I guess that's as close as we can get. Okay, so this is based on the word stand. I've got understandable, upstanding, withstand, and standard. So I picked 4 iterations. The other thing is that the ends of the words work nicely in my attempt to get a circle inside the composition, so that the eye is led from the mind map through the various techniques and then back to the tutor who is representing, in this case, both the tutor and the learner. Okay, so this is pattern spelling. For my learner, this works especially well because she's interested in Scrabble. So this is the natural technique for her, and it's one that she thinks of almost on her own. Then if we move down a little bit, let's see if we can go down. Yeah, good, okay. This technique, there, all right. This technique is request. Now what my learner sees is a page from a book. This is a page from the book, The Duck, which was one of the ones that was passed out in our book. It tells the story of a man who's planting a garden. Snails come and eat his garden. He goes and gets a duck. The duck eats the snail, sure enough, but the duck also eats the flowers, and so the duck meets his end on a platter in front of the guy. Okay, so I actually used this with my learner, and I would ask her questions as we went through, and I would say, now what happened here? Just taking one sentence at a time, working on comprehension, she can read all of the words at probably a high level 1 area of decoding, but her comprehension is very, very low. So what I wanted to use here was a technique that would help her to understand that there's information coming from the written material as well as the information that she has in her own mind. Okay, so this particular request technique was one that Kate recommended to me when we were down at White Point. I tried it out and it worked. We got to the page where Joe goes to the market and picks up the duck. My learner decoded this. She read the whole thing, and I said, where did the duck come from? And she said, the pond. And I, thinking if I have her read it one more time, she'll get the fact that the duck actually came from the market. So I said, let's go back and read the sentence one more time. And then I asked her, where did the duck come from? And she said, I told you, the duck came from the pond. And it wasn't until I talked to Avril up in Truro that I got the idea you could say, yes, the duck probably did come from the pond, but then he went somewhere else before Joe found him. So I didn't know how to handle it. So because it had been a big problem for me, I wanted to use that specific item. The other thing I liked about this is that I think a lot of writing, a lot of books look like this to my learner. It isn't clear, it's obscure, and there are things over the top of it that don't make any sense to her, so she just kind of ignores it and goes on what she knows. So that was my idea there. Then, if we move down a little bit further, the other technique that helps her with comprehension is the Herringbone Technique. So I've got my little fish. These are imitation herring. Trying to get away from the tuna. Maybe I can get this back, or maybe I can't. There we go. Okay, now these herring, this was actually kind of funny. I've been saving, it's like the inside of a cat food bag. It's real shiny material, shiny mylar. And I found this stuff one time when I was taking art classes, and I said, I'm saving that, I'm going to need that someday. And by George, I did need it someday. So that's where the herring came from. The netting came from, that had kindling in it, so I chopped up the kindling bag, took that away from the cats, chopped up the kindling bag, and glued it onto the paper. So anyway, let's get back out again. So, there you go. So, anyway, the techniques that I have working here are the mind map, and then we have pattern spelling up here, and then down here we have request. Down here is herringbone, which is a larger form of comprehension activity. It runs, as close as I could get it to go, it runs in a circle, all coming back to the mind of the tutor/learner, and that's it. Thank you, Madam Easel.